Hi everyone, this is a video about how to do jail support if activists are getting arrested. I want to start by saying that this is not condoning breaking the law, that we believe at DXC that all of our actions are legal and justified, but of course that doesn't mean that people never get arrested. People get arrested wrongly all the time. So the first thing that I'd be concerned with when I'm doing jail support is making sure I have information from all of the different activists who are at risk of being arrested. So this is my jail support checklist, and I'm going to show you the little intake form that I have. If there's anybody who I think might be at risk of getting arrested, I want them to fill out this form so that I have the information that I need to support them while they're in jail and afterwards. So one thing that I ask for is the full legal name. You might also want to add just the name you're known by so that you can correlate those two if they don't resemble each other. Of course, jails are going to ask for the legal name, the thing that's on their driver's license, or the ID that they have, and that might be different from what we know them as. Another thing is the date of birth, another thing that the jail is going to really need to be able to look somebody up. They often require date of birth for that purpose. In the Google form that we're using, it's really easy to accidentally put in the year that is this year. So today's September 12th, if I just select my birthday, which it is not, but if it were, it would default to 2019. And so later you're going to want to kind of look over the form and make sure nobody made any mistake like that, because of course, if somebody puts the wrong birth date, it'll be hard to look them up. We ask folks to look over a civil disobedience guide, just a document that kind of says what you might expect if you're being arrested, and to agree to the terms of it. One thing that it mentions is using a joint defense agreement after the fact if people get arrested. If we're providing legal support, we can't necessarily hire a different lawyer for every person. It doesn't usually make sense to have a completely different legal strategy for every person, and so having some unity after the fact is something that we kind of ask for in the civil disobedience guide. Of course, we ask for contact information so that we can get everybody together after the fact to talk about those things like joint defense agreements. We ask for mailing addresses. Different things might need to be mailed. The lawyers might need this information to pass on to the DA so that official mailings can get passed on. We ask for emergency contact numbers and under which circumstances we should contact emergency contacts. One part of jail support is making calls and making sure that if there are people who need to know that activists are in jail, they get a call and they know. We ask about unresolved legal charges because it could make it a lot more difficult if somebody is, say, if they're out on bail right now, if they're violating probation by getting arrested again, that can make it a lot harder to get activists out of jail. And so having some conversation about unresolved legal charges ahead of time can make things go a lot easier. We ask about medications. It can be really difficult to get medications to people who are in jail. Now, technically, jails are really supposed to provide medical care for inmates while they're incarcerated, even if it's just briefly, but that's not always how it works. So the advice that we've been given is to have people get arrested with their prescriptions on them. And it's the documented prescription that's on the prescription bottle. And we've heard that in cases where the jail doesn't have the medication, if someone's taking a particularly rare medication, that sometimes if there's medication in the inmate's property, that sometimes they'll be able to be given access to that medication if there's no other way to get it to them. We ask about bail needs. Different groups and different actions are going to have different kind of bail situations, and so it's important to have kind of a conversation with activists about what they're expecting and what they need in terms of getting out of jail right away, and talk about whether that's possible to do. We ask if you have a preferred snack. We want to make sure that we're providing kind of all the creature comforts and all the kind of emotional support that we can possibly give people while they're taking action for the animals. We have a little agreement about bail, and it's important to kind of manage expectations. And sometimes bail over the course of many activists can really add up and can be kind of more than any particular organizational budget can provide for. And so this is just a paragraph to ask people to understand that there might not be money to bail somebody out, and they might need to spend a little while in jail. And then here's a little paragraph about how important it is to remain in touch with the legal team. People can only give you legal support as far as you're in touch with them, and as far as you're cooperative and consenting to the particular legal support that you're given. So that's the jail support form. We ask everybody to fill it out pretty ongoing. So if you filled it out a few years ago or something like that, we ask everybody to fill it out again. People move, people have their medications change, and it's useful to just make sure we have up-to-date information. It might be the job of the legal team to do some briefings on know your rights and legal risks. So it's that civil disobedience guide again, this idea of making sure everybody knows what's going to happen if there are arrests, and also that everybody knows basically about their rights. Most importantly, it's important that everybody knows that they don't have to talk when they're in police custody. If somebody tries to interview them or really ask them any questions at all, they don't have to answer any questions, and they definitely shouldn't without a lawyer present. One thing you might want to do if you think people are going to get arrested is get cash for bail. If you're planning on bailing people out, you can look up a bail schedule for the particular county that you're concerned with, and it'll tell you what the amount is for a particular charge. Of course, you would need to know the actual charge, and we often can't know whatever charge the police are going to write down when they arrest someone, and so it's definitely of limited usefulness, but it can give you kind of a ballpark amount. If they're arrested on a misdemeanor, it's this amount. If they're arrested on a felony, it's this amount. Sometimes that can be multiplied for multiple charges written down. You might want to contact an attorney to be either there on the scene or on call, someone who you can answer, when you call them, and they can either talk to the police on your behalf, or they can answer kind of questions that come up either during or immediately after the event. And you're going to want to look at that jail support form that people filled out and make sure you have all the information that you need. People might skip questions or might make errors, like that birth date that we talked about. And you want to make sure that before they're incarcerated, you're able to ask them those follow-up questions. It's important to have people ready to go pick activists up from jail after they get out or after they're bailed out. You might want to encourage activists to carry their IDs, or at least to make an informed decision altogether about whether or not they're going to do that. Carrying IDs can make it a lot easier to kind of get through the booking process, and the booking process, especially when you have a lot of activists, can take a really long time. Sometimes we write somebody's phone number on our arm so that we can call out while we're in jail, while activists are in jail. Some people prefer to write on their torsos or on their legs instead of on their arms, because it's maybe a little bit easier for stuff written on your arms to kind of rub off over the course of several hours. It's good to have a team ready to go beforehand, people who are taking minimal legal risk, who are able to do all those tasks of jail support, driving people home, helping people pay bails, but also making calls to those emergency contacts. We would recommend finding a bond company that is recommended to you in case you want to use them. This might be a good time to talk about the difference between a bail and a bond. A bail is usually a large amount of money that's asked for you all at once that you pay in cash or by credit card or check. It's very unreliable that jails will take credit card or check, and if there is a credit card, they'll often charge a pretty significant fee, which is why we recommend getting cash to pay bail. So we've seen bail be a number like $10,000 or $20,000, which maybe you have, or maybe you can get in cash. And then if there are very many activists, it'll be a lot harder to get bail money for every single person. So in that situation, if people really need to get out of jail, you would find a bondsman and you would pay a bond. And a bond is a 10% amount that goes to the bondsman. Sometimes they'll let you even pay that amount in installments over time. And the difference is that you'd never get the bond back, but if you paid bail all at once, you would get it back. So at the conclusion of a case, you'll get your bail back, assuming the activist has gone to all of their court dates, and the bond you would never see again. So finding a good bondsman, someone who can work with you, who can move pretty quickly, who can maybe even give you a discount, is definitely recommended. And if you're going to be worrying about having too many people arrested to pay bail for everyone, or if you're just going to conserve resources and not bail people out, maybe create a list of people who do need to be bailed out if you're not going to treat every single person the same. And I definitely recommend having a lot of transparency in the system. If the reason that somebody needs to be bailed out is a medical need or a particular work need, let that be as transparent as possible, as early as possible. Immediately prior to an action, of course, it's important that activists aren't arrested with their car keys in their pocket if their car is someplace that it shouldn't stay for the duration of their stay. You want to have passwords on phones, not fingerprints or face recognition. You have a Fifth Amendment right to not have your phone searched without a warrant. And to preserve your privacy, you want to have your phone locked with a strong password, something that isn't going to be guessed and isn't right there on your body where the police can get it. We want to suggest that activists don't carry valuables with them to jail. We don't always get everything back that gets arrested along with activists. And we want to suggest that they take out their piercings. Often in the booking process, the police will request that you take out your piercings. We've heard horror stories of piercings like surface piercings that can't just be taken out that easily, that are ripped out of people's bodies. This is not okay, this is not legal, but it has happened, and it's something activists maybe should be warned about if they are being arrested with piercings that are difficult to take out. During an action, we want to know what police are doing. We want to have cameras on them at all times. It's good to have some record of their names and their badge numbers and who the leaders are among the police. We use the term red team activists. That's just to refer to anybody who's taking an enhanced risk. That term might change depending on the group or the action, but those folks, we want to really pay attention to who leaves or who decides not to participate in an action with higher legal risk. You want to not be looking frantically for someone who is actually safe in another location. We want to document injuries if anything happens where people get hurt, especially at the hands of police. We definitely want to have pictures and videos of everything around that we possibly can. Sometimes, especially in big cities, we've heard that activists can be taken away to jails that we might not expect, definitely not the closest one. In Chicago, we heard of them being taken an hour away outside of the city. You can ask police where the activists are being taken. You can even have an activist kind of discreetly follow a police car to figure out where the activists are going. And sometimes in more rural areas, of course, this won't be such an issue. Immediately after people get arrested, you want to call the jail and figure out what the charges are, how much the bail is. It's also sometimes possible to find this out online. It often takes a couple of hours to have this information available, but you want to do it immediately because at least they can tell you about how long they expect it'll take. If you don't have bail money right afterwards and you want to bail people out, going to the bank immediately if they're open is a good idea, or going to ATMs and making sure you're paying attention to who took what money out of ATMs so that everyone can be reimbursed in a timely manner. You want to contact that bail bond company if you're going to use one. And it's a good idea to have at least one activist who's always ready to greet people when they come out of jail. Sometimes people aren't going to be held on bail, they're going to be let out on their own recognizance. And it's really nice to have at least somebody there just in case somebody gets let out. So here's a little list of things that you might want to bring to jail if you need kind of a checklist. You're leaving. We want to bring cash again. We want to have your ID if you're doing jail support and you're going to bail people out, because you might be asked to fill out an IRS form if you're using a large amount of cash to bail somebody out. This is safe to fill out, assuming that you got the money in legal ways, and it's pretty routine, and we've been told that it's fine to fill this out. You might want to bring water and snacks for the jail support people and the arrestees, because of course not a lot of vegan food in jail. People might be hungry when they come out, and it might be a really long wait for them. A first aid kit in case people are arrested. You want to have necessary medications of arrestees if they're not able to get those in jail and they need to take them right away. Blankets can be good. There can be long waits. We've had times where there's a very slow trickle of people getting out of jail really late night. It's nice to have something to kind of be a comfort to the people who got out earlier. Something to read or occupy yourself while you're doing jail support is important because, again, it can be really, really a long wait, and people in waiting rooms of jails are not always the most friendly about loud conversations, etc. Portable batteries to charge phones goes along with something to read or occupy you, but of course also to take calls from jailers. It's definitely worth trying to put some money on an account if that's the system they're using, so that you don't need to put in credit card information every single time you take a call from somebody in jail. And of course, after people are arrested, you want to review that jail support form again and make any calls that they asked you to make. And of course, if there are people arrested, you want to review that jail support form again and make any calls that they requested you to make. And you're going to want to find a lawyer in case those charges actually get pressed, and that can be a subject of another video. So one final thing is that when we're talking to people in jail, I think it's really important to maintain a really positive, cheerful demeanor. You might be up all night. It might be a pretty unpleasant experience to do jail support and frankly exhausting. But keeping a really positive and friendly demeanor to people on the phone can be really important to keep up their morale, because jail is really meant to be dehumanizing in so many ways. When you use that payphone to call out, they really want you to think that the person on the other end doesn't want to hear from you. And for activists who get arrested, it is so important for us to let them know that we do want to hear from them, that we're really supportive of what they did, and also to not talk about anything of substance, because these lines are going to be monitored and can be used as evidence in a future court case. So talk about how they're doing, talk about their injuries, how their physical selves are and how their emotional selves are, and try not to talk about any particular details of whatever it is that got them into jail.